Let's head live to Ankara, Turkey, where NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is currently holding a press conference ahead of the Leaders' Summit, which will start on July 7th. Let's listen in to Mr. Rutte.
So that our support to Ukraine continues to flow. Because Ukraine's security is so closely linked with our own. So that's the overview of our agenda for the summit here in Ankara. We are delivering on the commitments made in The Hague to invest in our defense. We will ensure that we are rebalancing for the better, fairly sharing the responsibility for our shared security. We will turn cash into capabilities, joining forces with industry. And we will continue our robust support for Ukraine, reminding President Putin that we are firm in our commitment. Over the next 2 days, the 32 allies, along with partners from Ukraine, the European Union, the Indo-Pacific and the Gulf, will gather to ensure that NATO continues to deliver. Together, we represent nearly 2/3 of the world economy. And we are coming together because we know that cooperation is key. We are stronger together, in NATO, with partners, to ensure the freedom and security we all hold dear. Thank you.
All right, and now we'll head to questions. We'll start over here, fifth row towards the end.
Thank you very much. Secretary General Nick Robertson from CNN. Good afternoon, and thank you for taking the questions. Sir, since the Hague summit, President Trump has very heavily hinted that he'd like to annex Greenland, has very heavily chastised NATO allies for not being on the front line enough in Afghanistan, and Iraq has been upset that NATO allies have not stepped up and provided the support that he was hoping for around Epic Fury, United States and Iran war. What sort of tone is this summit going to have, and how hard is it in the light of that to project this consistent tone of unity and strength, the message that you just say is core?
Well, let me say that I had a good visit last week with President Trump, and we discussed the staggering increase in defense spending by Europeans and Canadians. And of course, this is because of Putin and Russia and Ukraine, but also because President Trump, has been extremely forceful, encouraging us to do this. And you could argue that he is the first president of the US since Eisenhower who was able to come to this situation where the Europeans and the Canadians will spend the same as the Americans. This equalization was a wish for 50, 60 years, and now it's happening, and I think in large part to his leadership. And we also discussed some of the disappointment he has, for example, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz or Iran more generally, and we also discussed almost 5,000 sorties of planes taking off from European bases in support of Epic Fury. And only last Friday we have seen the French and the Brits coming together with the Omani to make sure that collectively they will defend the principle of the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, which is an extremely important development only in the last 72 hours.
Okay, staying over here, seventh row, the man in the T-shirt.
That is NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte addressing and taking questions from the press. He's just opened the two-day summit, which will happen in Ankara, and President Donald Trump is expected to be at the summit, which happens in Ankara from July 7th to July 9th.